pirate from Birmingham Airport. When I got in the car, I turned on the onboard sat-nav and the last journey taken was to the Colthorpe Clinic in Edgbaston, the place I myself had been for an abortion a decade previously. I shuddered at the thought of the woman who had hired the car before me, not to go about her working life, but to go and do something that I take completely for granted. Myself and the member for South Cambridgeshire are not criminals. Yeah. Last week I asked the women of Northern Ireland to get in touch and tell me their stories of travelling to England, Scotland and Wales. Today I am them. Here are some of the extracts. It was Christmas Eve. I was with friends at a party. I stepped outside for a breath of air and I was raped. My mum had to book the flights, book me into a clinic. This all took money. I was from a working class family. We had to borrow it. I had to travel on my own. I'd never been alone anywhere after I'd been raped. I was in a relationship with an abusive man. I knew if I carried on with this pregnancy, I would lose my job, my home, and the ability to look after the children I already had. My consultant told me that following legal advice, medical staff were not allowed to provide any information to help me get an abortion. I cried on the phone when I rang Mary Stopes in Belfast. They told me how much it would cost to book a medical abortion. I considered taking too many antidepressants, not enough to kill myself, just to induce a miscarriage. I was 15, standing in McDonald's car park in a freezing December weather, staring at the boy much older than me, minutes after finding I was pregnant. I was terrified that someone would see me standing in my school uniform. I went to Liverpool 2 months before I turned 16 and 8 weeks after having sex with a boy who no longer wanted to know my name. The shame I felt lingered long after I'd made the 8-hour boat journey back to Northern Ireland. The taxi driver who...
Thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I think she has just very ably demonstrated this in her speech. But does she agree with me? But for the vast majority of women, having an abortion at whatever stage is a heart-rending decision that is rarely taken without huge consideration.
I absolutely agree, and I think that also I'd like to stick up for the women who aren't the difficult cases as well as those that are. I'll go back to the stories. The taxi driver who picked us up in Birmingham from the flight was kind. He drove right past the protesters outside the clinic and called them horrible people. He wouldn't accept mum's money for the fare. I realised he saw many girls like me. I wasn't alone. I did not want to travel on my own, so I had to wait for my friend to get time off work. Leicester isn't exactly easy to get to, so we set off at 4 a.m. on our flight. An hour's bus journey into Leicester and another 45 minutes on another bus to get to the clinic. After the procedure, me and my friend had to go and catch a flight again. Again, another 2 bus journeys. It took near 3 hours this time to get back to the airport. Another flight, then we went back to the house. Drained, exhausted, emotional, sore. The night before I was due to fly to London, I had some minor bleeding, and by the time I boarded the plane, I was in some discomfort. Immediately the plane took off. I made my way to the toilet. I was bleeding heavily. When a female steward eventually knocked on the door, I told her I was unwell and suffered heavy periods. Of course, she knew, but she said nothing. I was first off the plane, and the young steward who accompanied me to the public toilets in Heathrow Airport. She tried to persuade me to see a doctor or nurse, but I was terrified. I went to the cubicle, and I passed everything into the toilet, and I flushed it. When I returned to Belfast, I did see my GP, who was horrified and told me that I could have died. The final story of my speech sums up what each and every woman who got in touch, and it was hundreds. So I will finish with this. Despite my mental health issues, despite an abusive partner, despite having no money and no real sense of where I was going, I was expected to have this baby. But I didn't want to be pregnant, and that's really why I went to England. Afterwards, I felt sore, but mostly angry, that I'd been made to board a plane because the government that laid claim to my country demanded it legislates better for its English citizens than for its Northern Irish people. Because Westminster allows our women to be deprived of the basic human rights they give to their English citizens.
Thank you.